Welcome to the Bookish Introverts podcast. Join host Amazon bestselling author Brett Nelson and avid reader Melanie Dyer as they dive in to review books they've read, then chat with the amazing authors behind them. Quiet minds, big bookshelves. You don't want to miss it.
And thanks for stopping by to listen to us on our podcast. We know you have a lot of options out there when it comes to podcasts, so we are honored that you choose to jump in and listen to us on occasion. So we thank you for that. My name is Brett. This is Melanie, and today, we're here to discuss Karen Kingsbury's One Tuesday Morning. I don't know. I really, once we started the podcast, it would just be a travesty not to discuss a Karen Kingsbury book.
You have to do a Karen Kingsbury, yeah.
She is just a powerhouse in Christian fiction. So
very common name.
Yeah. Have you read any of her books?
I don't know that I have.
Okay.
I couldn't remember ever reading. I went through a list of her titles, and they didn't really, they didn't really strike a chord with me, the titles. So I'm not sure I have.
Of course, you do tend to really go.
I find an author I like, and then I have to read everything they've written. It's everything. I need all the things they ever wrote.
Yeah, see, and I'm kind of the total opposite. I kind of get bored with series books.
I continue the story for me.
Yeah, I mean, you'd read like 45,000 version. What's that author you talked about last time that started like in the 1600s?
Gilbert Morris. I've forgotten it. Winslow. House of Winslow.
Yeah. So see,
history, changing time.
Yeah, and you like historical fiction, so that's kind of your jam too.
It is.
Yeah. But for me, I tend to get bored with series books, and so and I do read series books that like I'll read a book, and then it may be 3 or 4 months before I launch into the next one, because by the time I'm done with the book, I want a new author and a new.
You want to change a pace.
Yeah, I want to change a pace.
I don't deal with change.
Yeah, well, on some things I do, and some things I don't, and I guess with books I do. So anyway,
I stick with what's familiar.
Yeah.
Just how I roll.
You like the comfort of liking what you like.
I do.
Yeah. I have read, honestly, I have not read a lot of Karen Kingsbury books. I've only been reading Christian fiction probably for about the last 2 years.
Really?
Yeah. Now, one of my favorite authors is Mary Higgins Clark. I've been reading Mary Higgins Clark. Like when I was younger, I liked, what's the sleuth girl's name? Nancy Drew. Like Nancy Drew. Once I kind of felt like I was too old for Nancy Drew. The very first mystery book I read was Mary Higgins Clark, and I very religiously looked for her books. As soon as they came out, I bought them and read them. So I've read every book in hers. I've only been reading Christian fiction for about the last 2 years. Recently, probably last year, I read a Karen Kingsbury book for the first time. Shades of Blue, I think it was. So I think this is probably the second book of Karen's that I've read. Yeah.
I've seen her name a lot. Hadn't read a book. Yeah.
Well, at some point, I want to kind of since this is your first time to read her, I kind of want to talk about what you thought about it. Sure. But first, let's kind of give. I'm sure everybody knows she doesn't really need a big, she
doesn't need a big intro.
She doesn't need a big intro, but tell us a few things about her for anybody that doesn't know.
So I did not know this. She was a sports writer for the Los Angeles Times, which I thought was interesting, and then wrote for the Los Angeles Daily News. And her first book, Missy's Murder, was based on a murder story that she covered in Los Angeles. Which is, I found that intriguing. She has written or co-written almost 100 novels. Again, with the 100 novels, how do you people do this?
I don't know.
13 million copies of her novels are in print.
Must be rough. As an author, it must be rough to have 13 million books in print.
#1 New York Times and USA Today bestseller.
Mm-hmm.
Last dozen books published topping bestseller lists.
Not just on the list, #1 on the list.
Topping bestseller list.
And that's hard to do.
It is.
That is not. You have to sell.
People are impressive.
Yeah, you have to sell Mondo books to be #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. An interesting thing, being an author, I have looked into what it takes to make the USA Today bestseller list and the New York Times. And not everybody, even if you meet the criteria to because you have to sell so many books it can't be like all from one place. It has to be from assortment of online sales and brick and mortar stores. It has to be a combination. And not everybody that qualifies makes the list. It's basically honestly, it's kind of a popularity contest on if the people at the New York Times like you and want you to be on their list, which kind of sucks. There's a guy
like me.
No, well, me either. Well, and there's a guy. He's a conservative political commentator, Michael Knowles. Have you heard of him?
I've heard that name.
Love watching his show. I think he's with I'm wanting to say Daily Wire, but it may not be the Daily Wire. But anyway, he sold a book that was about how conservatives are kind of censored in like social media and just in general. And he sold tons of books, and they refused to acknowledge it. The New York Times refused to acknowledge it. So it's kind of a popularity contest of whether they like you and your content.
Sounds like high school.
Yeah, it's basically like high school. Exactly. Good correlation there.
Sounds like high school.
Yeah.
She has several things developed that have been developed into Hallmark Channel movies, which I know you watch.
Yes.
You watch the Hallmark.
Yeah.
I'm not a Hallmark.
Although there is one that
a few, but not a whole lot.
Yeah. I think is The Bridge. Is that it kind of took place in a bookstore. For some reason I'm thinking it's called The Bridge. That's a really good one. You'd probably like it. Yeah. The
Bridge, A Time to Dance, and Maggie's Christmas Miracle.
Didn't care for Maggie's Christmas Miracle. The movie. I've never read the book. The book may be good, but yeah.
It says here she's got a series. You don't have to read it. Baxter Family. The Baxter Family series. And it looks like...
It just came out on Prime.
It is?
Recently, yeah.
Okay, so it looks like Roma Downey.
Yes.
Everyone's favorite,
angel.
Yep. Top 5 favorite fictional angels. There's Highway to Heaven. I mean, you got...
True.
I'm Gen X. You got to show respect for Highway to Heaven.
Did Highway to Heaven have angels in it?
Michael Landon was an angel.
He was an angel?
Yes, he was an angel.
I haven't seen
Look at him.
I haven't seen it since like 1980.
Sorry, that's a girl.
Is
that
not
a Gen X thing? That's a girl thing.
Did you have a crunch? Did you have a crunch
on Michael Landon? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Wait, not a crunch, a crush. Yeah. You had a crush on him?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
It feels like he's too old to have a crush. Not since Little House on the Prairie, I guess.
My first crush was Roy Rogers. I do not have a limit.
Age is not a factor.
A limit. I don't. It's not an issue. So that's
Reese Witherspoon floats my boat.
I'll give you that.
How can she not? Yeah. Anyway,
everyone loves Reese Witherspoon. Yeah. So she has. I know she has 3 kids. She's been married.
Roma Downey does?
No.
We're back on
Kingsbury.
Okay.
Sorry. Squirrel.
Yeah, squirrel.
That was my fault. Karen Kingsbury. She has 3 children, and they've 3 children with her husband, and they have also adopted 3 children. So she has 6 children altogether.
And I just found out recently her son's an actor. He played, the new movie that just came out, Something Like You or something
like you?
Someone Like You. Her son plays in that movie.
Really?
I saw, Karen Kingsbury has a podcast. I listened to an episode just this week. I listened to it, and she and Francine Rivers were talking to each other. Of course, yeah. So you need to look that up. And it was interesting.
That sounds intimidating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I doubt either one of them are going to come on our podcast. No. Let's just keep our expectations into check.
Yes.
I would like to think so, but I'm not saying I'm above reaching out to Karen Kingsbury and saying, hey. But
that's fair.
We'll just, if she does, yay, and if not, we didn't expect too much. So, but anyway, yeah, they were talking. Of course, you know how it is on YouTube. You watch one thing and then they show you everything related to that. Yes. And the next video was her and her son talking about, and she kind of talked about sort of their family, but she mentioned that he was, he's an aspiring actor. I think he's been in several things. Anyway, he's in the new movie. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
He makes me want to look him up now.
You need to look him up. All right. Don't ask me his name.
I won't do it right now.
Do not remember.
Do it right now.
Yeah, do not remember.
Do it right now. So that's her bio.
That's her bio.
I have for her.
Interesting. Yeah, I like her.
Yeah, I liked her.
I'll I'll probably reread more of her books at some point. I agree. I don't think she's probably going to be like a go-to author for me. I like her books well enough. I may have to look into this
saga, Baxter family.
Yeah, and I actually have read one of her books. I take that back. I read her one of her Baxter series books is a Christmas book, and I did read that. I think it was either last Christmas or the Christmas before. Yeah. So I think this is the third book of hers I've read.
Okay.
So anyway, yeah. Okay. So
the subject matter, the staging, I should say, the setting
of the book. You know what? Before we get into the book, let's talk about anyone that is of a certain age that was alive at the time September 11th happened. That's something you will never forget.
No.
So before we get into the book, let's talk about where were you the day that happened? What were you doing? How did it make you feel? I kind of want to, since the book is about that, right. I'd kind of like to talk about that.
Sure. I was at work. I worked at JCPenney at the time. They don't open, well, now they don't open until like 11, but they don't open till 10. But I was a day worker and we had to come in early to make sure everything was stocked and things like that. So by the time the first plane hit, I was out on the floor and we were all getting ready for the day. And I wasn't able to leave the register. I was the only one there. And of course the break room is upstairs.
So how did you find out about it?
People were coming down from the stock room and I was getting bits and pieces of information. And it was wild. There were, someone bombed the Washington Mall. The White House is on fire.
So a lot of rumors.
I heard that a plane crashed into one of the towers, and I heard about a plane crashing into the Pentagon. But I also heard all this other stuff, and I'm just standing there going, what is going on? I don't understand. Mm-hmm. And the weird thing was, we opened at 10. And there's always, your stay-at-home moms, your senior citizens that come in and start walking, they're walking the mall. Well, now the mall's open so they walk through the stores. There was no one was there. And it was the weirdest feeling. I think
now we're like people there and then they left after everything happened.
No, it was just no one was coming in. I think
because it would have happened before you opened. Yeah. The first plane hitting.
Yeah. So it was a very eerie feeling out.
So were you guys like, what's going on?
My first co-worker came in, I think at 11:30, and I went up to the break room. And by then, of course, it was pretty much done, but it was constant repeat on the television. And everyone's sitting in the break room. Everyone's watching. And it looked like a movie. Felt like a movie. I felt like I was in a movie. I was like, this not happening.
It didn't feel real.
It didn't feel real.
Yeah.
It absolutely did not feel real.
Terrorist attacks don't happen in the United States.
This is not something that's happened. I told someone, I was like, this is like watching a movie. It feels like I'm watching a disaster movie.
Yeah.
Because it's like, the Independence Day, you think of all the, when they shoot and the buildings blow. I was like, is this real? And then, of course, afterwards, it settles in, and it really is. It changed everything. Mm-hmm. And I was 23. I had just gotten married 4 months beforehand. So over the next week, there's a lot of things that come. I was terrified. I was like, is he going to join the military, or are they going to institute draft? Is my husband going to war? And you're thinking about all the people in New York City, and you're thinking about the people in the Pentagon, and of course the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. It was a very scary time.
It was
a very scary time. I have younger brothers and sisters that were I was like, what kind of world is this that they're growing up in, where suddenly we're under attack? It had to have been, I think the only people who could understand would have been the people who were alive during Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
To have an attack.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only Those are the only 2 times we've been attacked at that.
In our lifetime, so to speak.
Certainly in the last...
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't even in the same century. You can't say that, but...
Because I don't think I was alive during Pearl Harbor.
Well, no.
But it's still...
I feel like I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just... On that level, because that was, thousands of lives.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
But...
The atrocity of it was comparable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, at the time, we didn't know. I mean, we knew a lot of people, but because you can't have 2 buildings like that huge and not have a lot of casualties. But at the time, it took us a while to know how many people were actually.
Of course. And I mean, I feel like it's just a very human response to hope for so long because they call it a rescue effort for
forever.
Days.
Yeah.
We're all sitting at home thinking there's no way. But still, it's glimmer.
Yeah, well, I mean, the tower, the first tower was up for, an hour before it collapsed? Hour and a half, something like?
I think so. The first tower hit was the second one.
The first one to collapse was yes.
Because they hit the second one was more in the, I think it had more of
in the middle of the building. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, whereas the first one hit closer to the top. Yeah. There was that hope that, okay, they had an hour and a half to get out. So there was that hope that at least everyone below the impact zone were able to get out. But nobody knew.
But no one knew. And it's just, you keep sifting and they bring the dogs in and it just...
Yeah.
It's not, it's not a pleasant memory. It's not a pleasant memory for anyone.
It's not.
But I do think it's important that it not be brushed aside.
I agree.
Just because it's unpleasant.
No.
That's not how you deal with things.
No. And I feel like in this day and age, people do that a lot. Nobody wants to feel anything, Everybody needs a trigger warning. Everybody needs, and I'm like, and I get...
And it is good to warn people if you're going to upset them. But
yeah,
there are some things that just need to be discussed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like,
you just can't shy away from everything.
Yeah, we're not going to discuss the Holocaust. We're not going to discuss Rwanda.
Well, and
discuss things like that because no one wants to hear it. But I want to hear it, but it's kind of important that you hear about it.
Exactly. And I watched it. I'm not a fan of Dr. Phil in general, but I watched just recently, probably in the last couple of weeks, an episode where they were talking about the trigger warning, expectation these days. And he says, it's actually, if you're a person that has to have a trigger warning for every little thing, you're not in a healthy state of mind. You're not healed. Yeah, he said people that are healed, he said we've all had bad things that have happened to us. We've all have things that we don't, like for me personally, I don't really like reading about things that have to do with child trafficking. Now, I'm not triggered by it. I tend to, if I know that things are books or things that have to deal with that, sometimes I won't read them. Yeah. But I'm, but he said, there's a fine line between, he said, if you constantly are just looking for a trigger warning because you don't want to feel anything emotionally, then that's not healthy.
No, it's not.
There's a balance.
It's not.
Yeah. So
where were you? Were you at work?
I was at work. Yeah.
Where were you working?
My silver spoon had not kicked in yet. And Mother and Dad, it still hasn't kicked in yet. And I would like to talk to you about that.
Talk to my parents as well.
Yeah, no, I lived in Norman, Oklahoma at the time. And I worked at Norman Regional Hospital. I was a pathology transcriptionist in the surgical pathology department. So I was at work and the attacks happened.
Hospital must have been an interesting perspective.
Yeah, it was. And I heard about it pretty quickly because at the time, the laboratory and the pathology laboratory where I worked was undergoing major renovations. And they had actually pulled us out of the main hospital, and we were set up in huge metal buildings outside. So we were in a temporary lab at that point.
Right.
And my office where I worked was right next to the break room where the TVs were. And so I heard pretty quickly after it happened. And of course, people were like, oh my gosh. But the interesting thing about it at the time, when the first one happened, before the second one happened, they were saying it was a small commuter plane or...
Yeah.
And I'm like, this was a huge passenger 747. But like, that tells you how massive these buildings were, that a huge jet could plow into the World Trade Center, and everybody was talking about it being a small commuter plane. So that's when we first heard about it. That's what all the the CBS, NBC, all those people that reported, that's what they were saying, that it was a small commuter plane.
Yeah.
It was a small plane.
Well, no one dreamed that a 747 with all the technology, everyone thought it was an accident.
Yeah.
At the time.
Well, and there's a certain level. System. Yeah. And in New York City, there's like a certain level. I mean, you have to, because of all the skyscrapers, so it would have to be almost in your mind, you're thinking that would almost have to be intentional. Of course, at the time, nobody really thought that because everybody thought it was a commuter plane. It was really, everybody thought it was just a mistake, maybe some inexperienced pilot or something. So anyway, so we were at work, and of course, everybody was just in shock, that something like that would happen. And we were watching when the second one hit.
You were watching when the second one
hit. We were watching actually when the second one hit. And I can remember it was like a pin drop. I mean, it was so quiet.
I imagine.
It was so quiet. And then there was this one guy, his name was Kevin. He was a part-time police officer. He was a histology tech in the pathology lab, but he was also a part-time police officer. I remember he was the very first one to speak, and he was like, guys, this is a terrorist attack.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking,
I think everyone was sure by then.
Yeah. Once he said it, it made sense. But I never really thought that at first, because I was so stunned. I mean, two planes can't hit two buildings and it not be intentional.
Yeah. One may be an accident, but two is.
And I just remember thinking, who would do that? What kind of sick, demented people? And at the time, I was not a very worldly person, and I had no idea what Bin Laden. I'd never heard of Bin Laden. What was that organization, the terrorist organization that they were part of? ISIS? Was it ISIS?
It wasn't ISIS.
I had never heard of all those terrorist groups. It was.
If you hadn't asked me, I could have told you.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, I had never heard of all those groups. So for me, it was kind of a learning experience because.
Yeah. Well, we're
kind of sheltered.
Sheltered.
Yeah.
That was the end of, I guess, the post-World War II bubble that we had kind of built around ourselves as a society. I mean, not to say that no one knew, people who are into politics, people who are into military, people who are interested in, but I had my own thing going on. I lived here. I was newly married. I had my friends and my family, and that was just, I didn't care much necessarily about what was going on in the world.
Same.
Other than, I'd like to go there someday, or isn't this history interesting, or stuff like that. And I'm not, makes me sound shallow.
When you live in a small rural town like we do, it's easy to live in a bubble. It really is.
Very easy to live.
And I lived in a bubble.
Yeah.
I probably still do compared to most people.
Oh, I'm sure we do.
Yeah.
I'm sure we do. We still live in small towns, and
yeah,
we enjoy our bubble, but we know more than we did.
Yes.
We're a little more aware.
We're a little bit more leery. Yeah.
It's weird to think about what life was like before.
Yeah.
And compared to these things. Yeah. These things right here.
Hey, she's holding it for those that are listening. She's holding up her cell phone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I forget.
Yeah.
Cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't hardly know anybody who had a cell phone. People who had cell phones were usually business people. There were a few people who had cell phones for personal use. It wasn't uncommon.
Yeah.
But it was more common to find someone that didn't.
Yeah.
Have a cell phone. It wasn't like a Zach Morris block of
exactly.
They were
a phone that was the size of
but it was 9/11 changed that. All of a sudden, everyone had cell phones.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the thought of saying goodbye, or because you had those phone calls from the plane, you had the phone calls from the buildings,
from
all these people who, of course, had cell phones, these executives, these office, because in a place like New York City, it was probably more common.
Yeah, it hadn't trickled down to us
It
as
had
much.
not trickled down to us. I think, and now you can't find anyone that doesn't have a cell phone.
Yeah.
Everyone has a cell phone.
My grandma is 90 years old and has a cell phone.
Some people have a cell phone too young, but you know what? I'm not a mother, so I have no room to talk.
Yeah. But when I first got my first cell phone, it was for emergency use. Of course, when I first got my cell phone, it wasn't a computer. It's a flip phone. Yeah, but it was really just a phone to talk on. You didn't, for those of you that are younger, we didn't go search Google, and, we did not have the entire world. It was literally a phone to talk on.
It cost money to go on the web.
Yeah. Well, see, I don't think my first phone even had the capability to go on the web.
My first phone did.
I don't think, and of course, when I did get a plan eventually that had it, it was so expensive, you had to be very careful because, you could get a $200 phone bill because they didn't have unlimited plans and everything. So I think 9/11 changed a lot of things.
Changed so many things. The cell phones, the security at the airport. I used to fly to visit my grandparents, and they'd meet me right at the gate.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that now.
No.
You cannot do that now. So there's so many ways that it just changed everything forever. And it's interesting that she chose this. What was the publishing date? 2006?
2006, yeah.
Still pretty.
It was still raw, yeah. And a lot of people from the reviews I've read, a lot of people were really, they felt like it was too soon in some of the reviews I've read.
I can understand thinking that. With hindsight, I don't think it was.
I don't either, yeah.
But I can understand thinking that. I thought she handled the whole situation very gracefully. She did not hold back, I don't think. But I thought she handled it well.
Yeah.
So I don't think she handled the setting badly at all.
No. And I will say it was very well done. When I was going into it, I wasn't exactly sure what to expect because for me, I enjoy, to this day, I enjoy watching content like on YouTube. I love watching stuff about 9/11, why it happened, how it happened, because we know a lot more now than we did back then.
Yes.
So I like to binge on stuff like that. So I wasn't exactly sure what to expect when I read this book because, I still have strong emotions when I watch stuff related to, because I know how I felt when it happened, and it conjures those emotions. So I was like, okay, this may be a very emotionally stirring book, but I didn't feel the heart pulls that I kind of thought I would in the book. And I don't know why. I did in certain parts, but it wasn't as emotional read as I thought it would be.
I think it was the way she handled it. It was handled mostly through, I don't really think we're heading into spoiler territory here, mostly through the eyes of a firefighter. So it's attacked with the mindset of, let's go in here, let's get this done. He's scared. Mm-hmm. They're scared, but it's mostly his mindset. Get it. There's a job that has to be done here.
Yes.
Which, the firefighters and the police officers that were lost that day.
What brave people they were.
I can't imagine.
Can you imagine going up into that building?
The absolute commitment and bravery that took.
Yeah. And we live in a day when police are so criticized and villainized, and
there are bad police officers. There are.
There's bad everything.
Every occupation has its.
But you can't talk about a story like this and not acknowledge the people. Not many people would go up into that building knowing that there was a huge chance they would never come back.
They had to have known somewhere that there was at least a possibility. I don't think they would have expected the buildings to come down. No one expected that.
Nobody
but still,
expected that.
Going up to fight a fire like that, every time they fight a fire, my husband was a firefighter. And that mindset is just...
It's kind of ingrained into you.
Yeah.
That even if you're fighting just a little fire, anything can
happen.
Yeah,
anything can go wrong, much less a fire in a
story building. Yeah. Wow.
But I think she handled it well.
She did.
The setting.
Yeah.
And the mindsets. It was well done. I can understand thinking it was too soon, but looking back on it from 2024, I don't think it was.
I don't either. Yeah. And that was actually, I think that was pretty bold of her to embark upon a story at that point, because you're
going to get flack for it.
You're going to get flack for it.
You're probably going to get flack for it today.
And then you're going to get the people that are like, well, you don't know unless you were there, which is totally true.
That's true.
You can't know.
You can't know.
So I think it was a pretty bold move of her to write that, knowing that she's going to receive some.
Yeah. You'll catch flack for setting something on that day, even now.
Which, if you're an author, you're gonna get negativity no matter what you write. You can write the best book in the world, and you're going to get slammed for something.
Absolutely.
So I think as an author, you just have to say, okay, this is, especially as a Christian author, you just say, this is what I'm going to do, and put it out there. Yeah. So the story revolves specifically around two couples. Now, you may have to help me with some of the finer details, because
I can help you out.
I've read this book like 3 weeks ago, and I'm 2.5 books into. I've read 2.5 books since then, so you may be a little bit more clear. So correct me if I say anything wrong, or
sure.
Yeah. But it's from the perspective of two different families. Mm-hmm. Laura and Eric live in L.A.
I believe so.
They live in L.A.
It's California for sure. I think
California.
It's LA.
Yeah, I think it's L.A. And he's sort of he works in a huge conglomerate.
Yeah, he's an executive. He's a business executive.
Yeah, a higher executive. Like, I think he's maybe second in his business, in his company, second in charge. So it's them. They have a son. Josh. Yeah. And then Jake and Jamie are the other couple. He is a firefighter in New York City.
Yes.
And then they have a daughter named Sierra.
Yes.
Okay. Younger than Josh. Now, I will say, for Laura and Eric, I do not get. Eric was a total workaholic.
Yes.
Like, he put work above everything else in his life, before his family. I don't identify with that. I'm not a work above everything else. I'm sort of following the line of, I have to work because I want to eat and have to pay my bills. I've never been that kind of person.
I don't know many people who have. And again,
maybe it's because we're rural.
Again, I think that comes from where you're raised.
Mm-hmm.
You live, some jobs you have no choice but to work long hours. Nurses and firefighters.
Yeah,
they pull long hours all the time. Factory workers, but to constantly be at the office and no, I need to do this. I need to do this, and I need to do that. And I guarantee you, they're not getting paid.
Yeah. You're right.
When I clock out, I'm like, I'm not staying. No.
Yeah, and I guess if you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe that makes it more worth.
Maybe you have to have something to drive you to behave like that. There has to be something that is.
Nothing against my employer, but I'm not paid enough to live at work and to completely be connected to work. And thankfully, we work for an employer. We work for the same place.
Yes.
We work for an employer that wants you to keep a proper life-work balance.
Yes, they're very careful. There are mental health days. There are vacation and sick days. And, we have workshops on making sure to maintain a proper life-work balance. They don't want you to make your life all about them.
All about them. Yeah. And I appreciate that.
Yes, that's not what they're after. And we both realize
we're blessed.
It's very rare.
Yes, we're very blessed.
I've learned that through several interactions with other people, and it's very rare to have that. And
not just for our area, because there are places in our area that are big companies where you don't have the flexibility that we have here. They expect you to be devoted to them, and it's all about them and nothing about them. I could never work for a place like that.
Yeah, no. I mean, I kind of have worked for a place like that.
Yeah. I guess I would if I had to, but
it's no fun.
Yeah.
You do what you have to do. You make the paycheck, and wait and hope and pray for something better to come along.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I think being in a smaller town setting, we maybe don't run into people with that mindset too often. Although I saw a car the other day, and they have to have that mindset because I looked it up. I'd never seen one before. It's $90,000.
Wow.
Who spends $90,000? Y'all are insane.
I'm just saying that's more expensive than my house. Their car is
right. It's like, what is a Revant, whatever? It's electric. I'm not interested.
No.
And it's $90,000.
You can keep driving in your electric car,
but not for long. Sorry.
True.
Someone's probably offended by that.
Probably. Yeah, we apologize. We're not here to offend anyone.
Electric cars just do not work in our area. There's too much driving to be done, and it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
But someone has that, and someone has a Tesla.
Well, I mean, in New York City, you can park on the street and plug in your car and go. I mean, right there on the street.
It's like a city. It works, and I think that's what happens.
That's the distinct.
One's in LA, one's in New York City.
Yeah.
Not that Jake wasn't a workaholic, but I think that's where you're going to run into mindsets like that in Chicago, LA, New York, Dallas, Austin. These bigger cities that have these big corporations and these executives making hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't know if I made hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
I might work that much too.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
I don't know. I couldn't say, but I'd be willing to test that theory.
Yeah,
if anyone's interested.
If anybody's interested,
I will test that theory.
We have a great work ethic. I'm just saying.
We do. If you want to pay us hundreds of $1,000s, we have a fantastic work ethic.
Exactly. So yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting. I've never really been that devoted to a job,
No.
I do my job and I do it well, but I'm not married to the job.
Yeah, it's not the be all. There are other things in life that are more important.
Yeah. Keep it in its proper place.
But I mean, I understand how he got it later on. I understand that's probably spoiler territory. But I don't get that mindset. I don't know that I've ever known anyone. Really.
Yeah. And it did play into the story because.
Right.
Okay, I don't think this is a spoiler. In the story, Eric had to go to New York City for a business trip. And he was working, and I can't remember if it was North or South Tower. Do you remember which building he was in? I don't remember. It's not important.
South Tower, wasn't it? Wasn't the South Tower the second one hit?
I can't remember. Yeah, maybe. Since I'm not from there, I don't always. Yeah, if there's anybody listening from New York, forgive us for not having.
We apologize.
Yeah, we just. But anyway, he was in the building, and he was actually in the building when the plane hit. I think he was in the building where the first one hit.
No, he was in the building where the second one hit because they saw the smoke from the first.
That's right. Okay, that's right.
They were like, "Should we leave?" No.
Yes. And he and his boss wound up staying even after everyone else in the office they were working in, they were all like, well, we're leaving. We're
out.
Yeah. And they tried to talk him into leaving with them. And he and his boss wouldn't do it.
He did want to leave.
But they wanted to get this one last business action done.
He was afraid of losing credibility in the eyes of
his boss. Yeah. Which, I would have been like, sorry, dude.
Oh, well,
if you lose respect for me for this, then see you later.
Yeah.
But then again, that man wasn't paying me $500,000 a year, so or however much. Yeah. So anyway, so that's how he wound up in the building. He and his boss stayed because they wanted to finish this transaction, and they wound up. But he did wind up, if I remember correctly, on his way down before
after the second plane hit. After the plane hit their building,
it became real.
He was like, no, I'm out.
Yeah. Got a family to think of.
I'm out. And the other guy was still disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm
sorry. That's just plain stupidity. That's just.
It is. Yeah. It is. I mean, even if you don't have a family, which I don't think he did.
Yeah.
If you don't have a family to live for, where's your sense of self-preservation?
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I can't judge. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're there, but I can guarantee. Again, it's easy to say when you're not in that situation.
Yeah, that's true.
No matter how much money I made,
No.
I value my life more than that.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure. And the so we've got Laura and Eric. And because of his workaholic ways, he has virtually no relationship with their son.
None. Well, their whole family is very disconnected from each other.
They're very disconnected. He and Laura have a very strained relationship. Mm-hmm. And they try to work it out, and it's okay for a few months, but then it's just, right back to where it is.
And she's one of those people
at the end of her rope.
Yeah, she's one of those people that she's tired of being married to the man who's married to his job.
Yes. She misses.
Understandably so.
She misses the man that she married.
Because
that's not who she's currently married to.
Yeah.
There's been a fundamental change along the way, and he no longer goes to church. He doesn't want to talk about God, and that was something that was a big part of their lives.
Yeah, as I say, from what I remember, she did.
Yes.
Okay, so and he was a believer. He just wasn't putting it into practice.
Yes.
Do I remember correctly?
He was a believer. They both were. I can't remember if it was when they were kids or just they say in the early days of their marriage. Mm-hmm. And faith is still a part of her life, mm-hmm. and I think a part of Josh's as well.
Now there is another part of their story that I want to get into. At the end, we're going to do a spoiler zone.
Yeah.
And remind me, don't let me forget. There is one part of their story I want to talk about, but I don't want to talk about it now because it could be a spoiler.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway,
sure.
Well,
so in contrast, what you've got Laura and Eric, and they're interacting, and she's upset because he's not at a birthday party for his son, which that really sucks.
Yeah. Hang it up for your kid's birthday party. If nothing else, hang it up for that.
Yeah. And there's another part to their story as well. Eric has a brother, Clay.
Uh-huh.
But Clay comes to the birthday party, and he's recently moved back. So he's finally seeing, this older brother that he's looked up to all his life. Mm-hmm. So he's having to come to some realizations as well, mm-hmm. that not all is well in his brother's marriage. Mm-hmm. And so that there's that portion of their story as well. So in contrast, you've got on the East Coast, you've got Jake and Jamie, who are very happily married, despite the fact that Jake is a firm believer in God. He's very strong in his faith, and Jamie wants nothing to do with church, nothing to do with God. He is very patient with her. He does not push her. He does not pressure her. He prays for her.
Which I'm a firm. I like that. You never win people by pushing them and by guilting them. That's not a good way to win someone to the Lord.
On Sundays, he and his daughter, they go to church, and Jamie does her thing, and then they have the rest of the Sunday together. It does not cause, I didn't notice any strife.
I didn't either.
That it causes between them. I think he mentions there's a point of view, his point of view, for a little bit, that he feels like she's holding part of herself back.
Yes.
From him. But he doesn't call her on it, doesn't, just very patient.
Very gentlemanly.
Jake's the best.
Jake is the best. He's an easy person to root for.
Last time there was a guy that was the worst. Jake is the best.
Yes, he was good. The best. And I kind of want to delve into that for a second, if you don't mind. In Christian, well, really in all fiction, but in Christian fiction especially, you almost always have the trope of one person is a believer and one person is not.
Yeah.
That's a very popular trope in Christian. And always, more than likely, always, it's the man that's not the believer and the woman is. And the man is a jerk. He's a bully. He criticizes his wife, for being a Christian. And I really loved that Karen Kingsbury did not go there with that.
Yeah.
I like the fact that she kind of flipped the script and made the male the believer and the female not the believer. And I like the fact that she was even though she wanted nothing to do, and she was very clear, I want nothing to do with God. I want nothing to do with church. But she didn't try to, put a stop to it. And she was even supportive of him taking the daughter to church and raising her that way. And that felt like just a very breath of fresh air to me, because I feel like that that dynamic with when having a believer and an unbeliever has spouses. I feel like that's kind of a false notion in reality, because I know several people just in my personal life, and you may do it too, where one's a Christian and one's not. And it's a pretty loving relationship. They're not bullyish about it. So I feel like that's kind of a false notion. I get why authors do it because it's a good drama builder, but I feel like that's kind of a false notion in fiction.
I agree. And I have read books where a woman was an unbeliever and she's just very shrill and miserable and she's a Karen.
And she wanted to make everyone else as miserable as she was.
Yeah. So it was nice to see Jamie is not that person. She's stubborn and she just doesn't want to hear it.
But who among us isn't stubborn in one way or another?
But she's not mean. She's not rude. She's not, I wouldn't say she was selfish. She's just a very nice person. She's a good mom. She's a good wife. She's a good friend. She's a good person. And that it's nice to see, because there are plenty of people who are not Christians who are good people.
That are good people. Yes.
Good people.
Honestly, some
don't have to be a Christian to be a good person. I know some Christians that.
I know some unbelievers that are better people than believers. Honestly, it's true. It really is true.
Sadly.
Yeah. And as a Christian, we need to change that, people.
Yes, we do.
We need to change. We need to do better. Yeah. So I also, when it comes to kids in books, sometimes I cringe because
it's very hit or miss.
It's very hit or miss. Some people do not know how to write kids. I hate it when people write kids and they talk like they're 20 years old and they're 6. It's like, have you never been around a kid, Mr. Author or Mrs. Author? And it's like, I thought she did a fairly good job of especially Sierra.
Yeah, Josh didn't talk too much, but that went with his character. He was just very silent,
moody, you know.
As you would expect him to be.
And he was very, when Dad did try to interact with him, he was very, okay. Yeah. He didn't care.
As you'd expect.
As you would expect, because he was basically an absentee father.
Disappointed too many times.
Exactly. He's been disappointed too many times to trust him anymore. Yes. So I thought she did a very good job of, she didn't make the son that has the chip on his shoulder, she didn't make him too bratty and too unlikable. And they were kind of written like kids.
They were just.
What'd you think?
Yeah, I thought they were written very well.
Yeah.
I thought they were written very well.
Yeah. Okay, so Laura. She's the one that sort of was in the icky relationship with her husband.
Yes. And she had her, we want to discuss her moments.
Yes.
Because she is of the two women in the book, she is the one that believes in God. She is the believer. And she has her moments of
kind of doubt.
Why?
Yes.
Why did this happen? As, pretty much everyone.
Yeah.
In the country, if not the world, did.
Yeah. Why was the first question.
Why? How? Why didn't God do this? Why didn't? And that's a question that you ask yourself whenever something bad happens. As a Christian, God has the power.
God can do anything.
God can do anything.
And Laura had several musings throughout the book of, God could have caused those planes to not hit the World Trade. Yeah. He could have made Eric leave the buildings because as time went on, they just assumed he didn't make it because he never called home. Right. And so even though she was holding through, she continued to hold hope that he was still there. Maybe he was in a hospital and was unconscious or whatever. But I did find it interesting that as a believer, she kind of questioned, God, why God could have done this. Why didn't God do this? And that tends to be what happens just in general life. But I think the distinction is, just because God can do anything. God could have plucked those planes out of the sky. But the point is, And it's funny, the people that don't believe in God, that attack people that believe in God, they're the first ones that will stand up and raise their hands to the fist to the sky and say, "You're God, let this happen." But God gives every human being a free will to do. But we have right and wrong. Those hijackers knew that what they were doing was wrong.
Well,
I'm assuming, in
a way, yeah, they thought they were in the right.
Yeah, they thought once they got done, they're going to go to paradise and have 7 virgins waiting on them, and because that's sort of what their belief is. But the people, especially the unbelievers, who like to use circumstances like that as a way to say your God is not a good God, your God does not exist. But the thing you have to remember is God does not usurp the free will that He gives us.
No,
He lets people. He gives them the freedom to carry out the evil that's hidden in their hearts. And I think that's one thing that especially unbelievers either can't grasp or they just don't want to.
Sometimes it's hard for believers to grasp.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because you believe in God doesn't mean it's easy. And that was a good thing to see with Laura. And it's funny because apropos of nothing, I was watching The West Wing last night. It's a comfort show for me. I've watched all 7 seasons probably a bajillion times. It was an episode where the president, who is a very strong Catholic, is angry at God. And I'm going through a few things right now that I'm just like, really? And it's such a well done scene. And I was just tears pouring down my face. I usually cry on that scene because it's just it's well acted. It's well. And I know Martin Sheen, who played the president, he said that he had trouble doing it because he himself is a strong Catholic and he felt, because he's mad. He's mad and he's basically yelling at God.
And we've all done that.
And it goes into this because she's the same. I mean, she doesn't yell at God, but internally she's angry.
Yeah. She's
angry at Eric. She's angry at God. And that's just a very human thing. And a lot of people don't think that's okay, but I think it's okay.
I totally think it's okay.
It's a human.
He created us.
Yeah. It's a very human thing to be angry.
Mm-hmm. It's hard for our finite minds to wrap around the God, and it's kind of cliche, I don't know if this is a Bible scripture or if it's just that God moves in mysterious ways. Is that just a cliche or is that actually in the Bible? I can't remember.
I think that's just a saying.
Yeah, that is I always hate that saying. That
I mean, God, it might be a Bible verse.
Yeah,
I apologize to my mother-in-law. That's a Bible verse. I'm sorry if I've disappointed you.
Yeah, me too.
But
God knows our frail natures, and He knows that our ways are not His.
Yeah. And knowing the subject matter going into the book, I was hoping that she would touch on that. And she did. Mm-hmm. There were plenty of people who, at various times, that you could see anger reflected in their point of view. Mm-hmm. And I just think that's a normal... People should not be ashamed of being... No Christian should be ashamed of being... When it becomes a problem is when you don't let yourself let go of it. Mm-hmm. It's not going to do you any good to just keep it, and that plays into Eric. Look at me go.
And sometimes that's why non-Christians don't like Christians, because Christians like to, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but there are some Christians out there that they work so hard to preserve that, I don't struggle. I'm not tempted. I'm not. Yeah. And that's, and that's why a lot of non-Christians don't like Christians because nobody's perfect, not even a Christians.
When someone lose someone, when something happens and you can't see your way out of it, when it's just this happens and it's just a landslide of stuff, just one right after the other. I think it's perfectly normal to be angry. Like, I'm doing my best down here, and am I doing something wrong? Have I not done enough? Is it?
Yeah. And the Bible says it's okay to be angry, just don't sin when you do it. There's a difference.
There's nothing wrong with being angry. Just don't murder someone or something.
Exactly.
Don't murder anybody and don't lie. And
exactly. It's okay for me to get mad at you, but I cannot throw a brick at your head. That is wrong.
Well, yes, that is. Yeah. And I would like to drive that point. Please do not throw a brick at my head.
I won't.
But I'm sorry. I just feel like it's very important that people understand it's okay.
Yeah. It's okay to question. It doesn't make you less of a Christian.
No. Just like having depression doesn't make you less of a Christian.
No.
That's not.
Don't even get me started on that.
We're not going to get started on that. But
churches need to do better on that too.
Yeah. I'm glad that she brought the anger into it, because I think that's a very important thing to touch on, especially with something like this. It's okay to be angry. Just don't hold on to the anger.
Yeah. Don't let it ruin you.
Vent and move past and, realize that you're not going to do any good by being angry.
No. Yeah.
He loves you anyway.
It destroys you.
Deal with it and get over it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, granted, is sometimes easier said than done.
Much easier said than done.
But for your own self-preservation, you have to find a way. And sometimes
you're only hurting yourself.
The only way you can do that is to lean on God. And when you're going through times like that, when you're at your lowest, sometimes leaning on God's not exactly what you want to do. That's not your human nature.
Not always.
I've been in a place like that where, thankfully, I was raised by parents who instilled the importance of church and God and having that proper place in your life. And yeah, it's just, I lost where I was going with that. Squirrel. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, do you remember where we were headed with that? We both had a blind moment.
Yeah, we're sorry. Probably need to go on to Jamie and Jake.
Yes.
Who, of course, is in the building because he's a firefighter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what and I believe his station was basically right in the shadow of the towers.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought it was kind of weird that they were so long in getting called up.
Yeah.
When they're so close. But
yeah.
I don't know how many, there's probably a bajillion fire stations in the shadow of the towers.
Probably.
I can't. I've only been to New York City once, and I actually went to the two towers, but I wasn't really paying that much attention to anything but the towers.
Yeah. The towers were a commanding presence.
Yes.
I've never been there and seen them personally.
We went the year the bomb went off we were supposed to be able to go in, but the bomb that was set off in the basement garage, they weren't allowing visitors in. But we did go to the towers.
Yeah.
And they were, it was just mind blowing to see how huge they were, especially for a little girl from New Mexico who lived in Dairyland.
Yeah.
Nothing I'd ever seen before. Albuquerque didn't have anything like that.
Yeah, when you're from the sticks.
Yeah, that was my big city. Albuquerque. That's my big city at the time. That was, LA a couple of times, but still.
Yeah, it's a definite culture shock.
Yeah, huge culture shock.
Yeah.
So Jamie and Jake and
their paths did cross. Is that a spoiler?
Well, not anymore. So I thought that was interesting. There, Jake's going up and Eric's coming down.
He finally came to his senses and decided to go
after
down.
he came to his senses and decided to leave, and he trips, hurts his ankle.
I don't think this is a spoiler.
Han reaches out to help him up. He takes it. It's firefighter. It's Jake.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess his helmet fell off.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what happened? Jake's helmet fell off.
Yeah.
Eric sees his helmet. He's got a picture of Sierra taped in his helmet. And Eric takes note of that. It's strange the things you notice. I didn't question that because it's odd. The things that take root in your mind in moments of panic or fear.
I think it intensifies the things around you.
And I think they exchange a few words. And then Eric's on his way down and Jake, of course, back on his way up. And that's really, I'd say that's probably kind of the turning point in the novel, because at this point we've gotten an insight into Laura and Eric. They're They're not happy. Well, Eric is sure that everything will be just fine because Eric is oblivious.
Yeah.
Jamie and Jake are happy. The fact that Jamie refuses to talk about God is the only real issue in their marriage. But I don't know where I'm going with this. This is where everything just kind of turns on a pin, I think.
And I will say the first few chapters were integral to the story because you needed them.
Yes, very much so. You need them. There's not a lot happening, but you need the insight.
And it was my least, the first part of the book was agonizingly slow to me. Once we got into the action of the towers and everything, for me, and that was probably 50 pages in before
I would think so.
Before that happened.
But it was definitely integral
for sure. Yeah.
To the rest of the book because you need that backstory. You need that character development or in some cases non-development.
Yeah.
To see where people are coming from later on.
Yeah. And hopefully where they're going to grow or not.
Yes. So the towers come down and of course everyone is husband in the tower was, where was my husband when it happened? Laura's like, did he get out? And Jamie pretty much is sure that there's no way he wasn't part of that.
Because he was not the type of person that would have not.
Right.
He would not have been running out. He's the type that would have been running in.
Absolutely. And he
and his best friend.
He was on shift, It wasn't like he was off like so many were that day and reported to their stations anyway. I know there were several, probably most, if not all, off-duty firefighters and police officers that were there.
Yeah. The call of duty.
Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to think of a way to get into this without.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope because you don't want to say too much.
Slippery slope with this one.
You don't want to mess things up for the readers.
There is mention later on. Do you want to talk about the marital?
I do want to get your opinion on something. I think I know where you're going.
Okay.
There's a storyline in there. Yeah. Okay. There is a story arc of Amnesia.
Yes.
In the book. And I was not a fan of it.
I am not a fan of the Amnesia thing.
Now, it made sense with the story.
She did it very well. I have seen it too many times done. And it just drags on and on and on. And
it's melodramatic.
All of a sudden, everything comes to light. She didn't handle it that way. It was a very well done. But I have to say, when I realized there was amnesia involved, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
You got to be kidding me. Really?
Yeah.
The amnesia? Yeah. She did handle it.
Yeah.
Very well.
So Eric.
It was well written.
Yeah. Eric.
So for any doubts.
Yeah.
Sorry for the doubts. It did just make me kind of roll my eyes there.
Yeah.
When I realized what was happening, I was like, oh man, not the amnesia.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when he comes home, he's in the hospital and they find out he has amnesia. The wife, was it Laura or was it Jamie? It was Jamie.
Yeah. So she gets Jake home.
She gets Jake home and
he's hurt, burned.
He has no recollection of who anyone in his family is except Sierra, the daughter.
Sierra is who he remembers.
So in an attempt to, I guess, help restore his memories,
yes,
she goes to his private journal and reads it. And I did not like that. As such an event, and I get why she did it. She hoped, but not only did she read it, she gave it to him and was like, "Here, this is your journal that you kept. Maybe this will help you remember what you can't remember."
I was a little more on.
That didn't stick out to you as kind of cringe.
Part. I did not really have a problem with her reading the journal. I understood why she was doing it. Her husband was physically home, but her husband was not home.
Yes.
And their story is they've been together since middle school. And she missed her husband. It was basically like he was there, but he was actually dead. The person in her house was a stranger, and she missed her husband. And I think her going and finding the Bible in the journal and reading it, I think it was a source of comfort to her. I can understand that. I can understand why she read it. Giving it to Jake, that seemed iffy to me because the doctor said, don't push. Don't.
Mm-hmm.
Because then naturally. What he's doing instead of remembering is learning.
Yes.
I understand her thought process behind it.
He's not learning. He's using what he's reading.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it confused things a little more between them.
But when I was reading it, I had the complete opposite perspective as you. I felt like she shouldn't have read it. She should have just given it to him and said, here, this is your life. Yeah. Like I just like a journal is a very personal thing.
It is a very personal
thing.
And
I just feel like she shouldn't have read it, even though I know my heart was in the right place. I remember feeling very cringe by the fact that she not only went to his journal, she read it. Yeah. I would have liked to have seen her just give it to him and say, yeah, okay, maybe this will help.
I wonder if, from a wife's perspective,
possibly,
if that's, my own husband was very badly hurt not too long ago. And, if it had been any worse, he probably wouldn't be here. And if he kept a journal, but he had amnesia, I'd probably read it too.
Really?
I don't think he's watching this or listening to this, but
I'm going to tell him. I'm going to tell him if he's got a journal, he better hide that thing better.
I'd read it too. Sorry.
If I was married, I'd be like, lady, you better not read. I better be dead if you read my journal.
I would miss him.
I don't keep a journal, but
I don't even keep a journal. Yeah. I don't know many people that do, but I think I would miss him, and I'd miss. She didn't go to it right away.
No, she didn't.
It was a few days.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was just the torture of being, he's there.
It was kind of desperation.
She's just desperate.
Yeah.
Just desperate.
And you do
but
weird
I understand
things
why
desperate.
You feel it's a huge, because it is a huge invasion of privacy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's grasping at straws.
True. Yeah.
Doing whatever
she
can.
That.
But I think giving it to him, I think all it did was complicate things.
Possibly,
at the same time, it also helped. So,
you're right. It could give false memories.
Yes.
It could, yeah. So yes. I can kind of see it from that point too. Reading all that, it would be hard to distinguish what was real memories and what you were reading.
Yeah.
Which is probably why the doctor said, don't push it. Let it come back naturally.
Absolutely. But at the same time, it was really a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that comes into play later.
Yeah. Most people probably wouldn't have ever found that cringe, but for me, when I read it, I was like, oh, that is so cringe.
Yeah. I can understand.
Yeah. So Jamie had access to, was it Jake's dad's Bible?
It's the Bible Jake's dad gave him.
Yeah.
On his first day.
I like that she had that to lean on.
Yes, first day.
And that she eventually gravitated to that.
Yes.
So, yeah, I thought that was a nice
That was a nice touch.
Plot point.
Yeah. A very nice plot point.
Yeah.
And I know there is a little bit, some people are like Brett and don't care for any mention of romance beyond the kiss.
No. And if you only put a kiss in if you have to.
There's a little bit more than it's not. It's more thoughts than anything. There's nothing graphic in here.
No.
At all. Brett mentioned that he did not care for that.
No.
It didn't really bother me. It's unusual to see sometimes, I think, in Christian fiction when there's romance. I've read a few that have stuff like that in it. It doesn't bother me.
It doesn't bother you? I did not like, and again, there was nothing graphic in it, but and maybe this is a little bit prudish of me, but yeah, there were several mentions actually for in the Jamie and Jake dynamic.
Yeah.
There were several times when Jamie sort of resorted to the physical acts of being married and like missing that, and which I totally get, and she chose to not. I can't remember if it was on her own or if the doctor recommended it, but she didn't push sexual relations while he was in the healing process.
No, and that was doctor's recommendation.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, right off the bat, he said he'll need to stay in the guest room.
Yeah,
because he doesn't know you.
Which I also thought was weird. I'm like, okay, he's the one that's hurt. He needs to be in the good bedroom, and she needs to be.
They described the guest room. It sounded really nice.
It sounded really nice. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't like all the, and again, they were very brief. I just didn't like all the. Yeah, it wasn't
anything graphic. It's not.
No, I think it could have been. She could have just skipped over that, and it wouldn't have. Yeah,
didn't bother me, but yeah, I don't know if it's a guy thing.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just a
I mean,
it might have bothered too.
I wasn't offended by it. I just remember thinking, this is just, we really don't need this. It's human nature, especially when you're married. I mean, so I get it. I just wasn't a fan of it.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah,
I get it. But yeah.
Yeah, I've read worse too. Nothing will make me put a book down faster, especially in secular fiction. Well, but even Christian fiction, I do not like it. It belongs in the bedroom behind closed doors. Nobody needs to even be there or know about it other than the man and the wife. So yeah, that will make me put down a book faster than anything is steamy scenes.
I get that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
and now you know.
And now I know. Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, for readers that are listening, don't worry about it. It's not blush-worthy. That's just me being silly.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Just mentioning.
Yeah, exactly. What you thinking?
I'm sorry. My thoughts are very scattered today. So apologies to anyone who's listening.
I just want to kind of touch on, can you imagine? I thought Karen Kingsbury did a very good job at putting to paper the emotions people were going through when they didn't know where their loved one was, when they didn't know where they were. Imagine. That they were trying to hold.
Another thing is that you just wanted to hug everyone.
Yeah.
You wanted, or at least hear their voice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I called my grandparents that night.
For sure.
It was a very scary time. And
as a collective.
To actually be in that city, or to know someone who was flying to New York City or flying out of New York City, or
we were all shell shocked by it.
Yeah,
and as a collectively as a nation, I think it kind of made us rethink relationships and
for a while.
But for a while, yeah. But imagine actually being there and being impacted by it in real time.
Yes.
She did a very good job. And again, she never mentioned in the book that I know of in the author's notes or anything, whether she actually knew anybody that had been impacted personally. But I felt like she did as good a job as anybody could do with capturing the emotions behind that without going, because you have to take a sensitive touch with stuff like this, because you can go overboard with it. And it becomes so melodramatic that you're like, oh, I want to puke.
That's true.
Yeah. So
you can take it too far.
Yeah. And I don't feel like she did.
No.
I thought it was the perfect balance of drama. And I thought she did a very good job with that.
Yeah. And they touched on that, Laura looking for Eric. His brother Clay decided, that's enough. We just got to go to New York City and look.
Mm-hmm.
And they had that hope that he was somewhere. He was unidentified. He's somewhere out there until finally someone just had to tell him, look, it's been over a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't a rescue effort anymore.
Exactly. Well, and at some point in the book, Laura and Clay, which was Jack, no, what's Laura's husband name? Eric. Laura and his brother actually did go to New York
City, and they were putting up the flyers and everything. And it took that police officer telling them, you're on a wild goose chase.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah.
And he was very blunt with them, but I can't imagine, what he had seen and
the people he had to deal with.
I couldn't even blame him for being, but I think also at that point, that's the only thing that was going to get through.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Yeah.
That's you're wasting your time and your
and even after
your emotional you're draining yourself and
for no reason.
No reason.
Yeah.
It's time to accept.
But again, easier said than done, and once the police officer said that, she still had that little niggling, maybe he's laying in a hospital somewhere and just nobody knows who he is. And I can't imagine knowing somebody that you didn't know where they were. I mean, we're talking days after not knowing where they are. How do you abandon that hope?
Right. And not everyone had cell phones. Again, there's that. Not everyone had cell phones. I'm sure New York's phone lines were a disaster.
Yeah.
I don't know how easy it was to get through.
Yeah. So that, and at that point, when they go there, the police officer says, this is no longer a rescue mission.
This is recovery.
At that point, this is recovery. And at that point, that started her journey toward coming to terms with, okay, Eric he's gone.
Yes.
And then having to deal with going home and, have that conversation with your kid.
Telling her son and but also she had the realization, which I thought was interesting, that he'd really been gone a long time.
Yes, emotionally. Yeah. Well, and even logistically at points.
Now even physically, he wasn't.
Because I think they alluded in the book that it was not uncommon for him to be gone on a business trip for a week and never call home. Yeah, and he would leave, and then she would never see or talk to him again until he came home from the business trip.
Yeah.
So
focused on the business,
which was part of her turmoil, because it wasn't unusual for him to be incommunicado for a week at a time. Yes. So in her mind, this is not unusual for him. So there's still hope.
Yes.
Even though there really wasn't.
Yes.
And logically, she knew there wasn't, but she couldn't let go of that hope.
Yes, that's true.
So if you're a businessman, call your wife every night. Call your wife.
Call your wife every night. Talk to your kids.
Yes.
On Jamie's story, I thought I was very touched by the sermon that was written. Mm-hmm. I can't remember any specific portions, but there is a point where she agrees to go to church with Jake.
Reluctantly, but she did.
Reluctantly. And Sierra. And they drop Sierra off at Sunday school, and then they go on to church.
Because again, there was that hope that, he spent so much time with these people at church. There was the hope that maybe that might trigger some memories.
And it's also something where you get a little glimpse of her past, what she thinks church is. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it's been church for a lot of people. She keeps waiting for the pastor to yell at her.
Yes.
She's stunned by all these people who are coming up and hugging and
showing genuine concern.
And all this stuff, because it's unlike anything she's ever seen. So you're like, oh, what kind of a church was she in? Not the best kind.
Not the best kind.
And the sermon really touches her and tugs at her heart, and it touched me as well. It was very well written. Mm-hmm. It was very emotional. I'm pretty sure I teared up. Mm-hmm. It does not move her. It should have.
Like to salvation, you mean?
It does move her, but she refuses.
Yes.
She pushes back.
Yes.
Not uncommon.
Not uncommon.
She doesn't feel good enough, which is also a very common feeing.
Well, I mean,
so why would God want me?
Seasoned Christians go through that sometimes.
Why would he want me? I'm not good enough. For this.
Yeah. And again, perfectly fine to go through seasons like that. That doesn't, even as a Christian, that does not mean you're a bad Christian. That just means you're human.
Yes. And I really wanted to touch on that because it was a part that stood out to me.
Yeah. It was a poignant thing that she went, even though she didn't want to.
But it begins the softening.
It does.
Of her heart in that area.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was not all sermons are well written
no.
And
well, and sermons in books are kind of like prayers in books for me. Sometimes I skim over them.
Yeah. But this one was very well done, and I wanted to touch on that.
It wasn't heavy-handed. It was well.
No, it was not.
Mm-hmm.
No, it was not.
Yeah.
What else?
I don't know what it was, because, like I said, it's been several weeks. I'm a couple of books past this one now, so I can't remember. At some point during the book, I had something popped into my mind that I had watched, I think in a documentary or something, or maybe it was in an interview. And like, it really hit my heart to remember that. So I kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit. I don't know if it'll be interesting to anyone else or not, but do you remember when United 93, that's the airplane that went down in Pennsylvania? I don't know why, but United 93 is the plane that really, what happened to all of them was horrible. But for some reason, I have a special, like, something for those people. I don't know why. I just, for some reason, that one. And
I think because we know more about what went on that
yes. Plane. Well, and at that point, they knew what was going on. Yes. I know there was horror on the other planes, even though they didn't know that they were the beginning of a terrorist attack. But I'm sure they knew at some point that these are terrorists.
Oh yeah,
didn't know how it was going to turn out,
what they were trying to do.
Yeah, and I have heard that there are actually cockpit recordings of the terrorists in the first two planes, or at least in one of the planes, where the guy that's flying the plane, he's reassuring the people, if you just need to sit down and do what they tell you, we're not going to hurt you. We're going to turn the plane around. So they did try to reassure the people, even though he was lying to them, you know. So there has been some communication, but by the time they got to United 93, they knew that they knew what was going on. They knew they were in the middle of a terrorist attack. And Todd Beamer, do you remember Todd Beamer? Is it Scott Beamer? Scott Beamer. Yes, Scott Beamer. Yes, he apparently everyone on the plane at that point was trying to get in touch with their people. Well, he never got in touch with his wife because she was pregnant, and he was afraid that her knowing what was going on, he was concerned with his unborn child, and I'm sorry if I cry but so he, instead of calling his wife, he called, I think it was 911. I can't remember. So he was talking to this woman. It was either 911 or 911 patched him in to someone else. Anyway, he had several phone conversations with this woman down on the ground, and I think she was a 911 operator. And she went through all this with him, was on the phone with him, and I don't think they ever hung up. It was like from the time he got her, they were on the phone until she was on the phone with him until the very end. And he's the guy that's famous for saying, "Okay, are you guys ready? Let's roll."
Let's roll.
Yeah, and at that point, they stormed the cockpit because they knew their only choice was to fight and try to take them down, or they were gonna die trying. Because that was their only choice. And so anyways, he put the phone down and they did their thing, and she heard everything, all the screaming and everything of them charging down the aisle. And she lost contact with them, once the plane crashed. And she was talking about, I saw an interview with her, and she was talking about how she couldn't hang up the phone even after she knew it was over, because, there was the hope that, well, maybe. Well, of course, at this point, everybody's glued to their television screens.
Yes.
And when it finally came that, of course, the plane disappeared off the radar, so they knew probably something bad had happened. But it took her like 30 minutes. Like she refused to hang up the phone. And finally her supervisor came over and I think at that point they had realized that the plane, that there was coverage of the plane,
right,
in the field. So they knew that it was over.
yes.
And I don't know, that story,
she herself to.
Yeah, she could not bring herself to end that connection. And finally her supervisor came over and she was like, you need to hang up the phone now. And, and she said that was the, with everything, she prayed with him. He asked her to pray the prayer, the Lord's Prayer with her and everything. And of course, please call my wife and tell her I love her, and all that stuff. So with everything that she went through with him and just the horror of knowing what was going on and trying to keep calm for his benefit. She said the hardest part was hanging up that phone because she felt like she was abandoning him. Yes, it was that one last tie. And I don't know why, something in the book triggered that story for me. And like, I can't even remember what it was.
I had never heard that story. I don't think. I don't know a lot about United 93. I know it's real.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard some recordings, but I don't think I had heard that story.
Yeah. Well, one of the guys on the plane, I think his name's Tom Holland. His wife's from Arkansas.
Really?
They didn't live in Arkansas at the time, but she lives outside of Little Rock now. I think her name, is it Dina? Anyway, yeah. So, yeah. So there's, she actually, yeah. Anyway, I don't know why. I don't remember what it was about the book, but something about the book brought that memory up for me.
Bound to bring stuff like that up.
Was there any stories like that that the book kind of conjured?
There's always a documentary I try to watch on the anniversary. I feel like it's owed to the people who were killed. Can never remember the name of it until it pops up. It was a documentary that was, they've kind of pieced it together with this. There was a documentary maker with one of the fire stations that day, and that's where the only footage from the first plane.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only one that got any footage of the first plane going into the tower.
I've seen that.
That
is a haunting video image.
Yes. But when Jake was at the towers, and they were talking about the people that
were like
jumping.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
Jumping. There is you can hear that in one of those documentaries. There is footage, and they're inside the building. They're already at the base station. You don't see it. You can hear it, and it's
oh wow,
it's horrifying sound. You think for a second it's something else, but when you realize what it is,
mm-hmm.
it's just,
it brings a whole
I can hear the sound now. I can't imagine being there, but them talking about it in the book.
Yeah.
Images from that documentary were just,
it brought some sights and sounds to you.
Yes.
And maybe that's what the book, it conjures the things that hit you, because we were all impacted by different things and different stories. So maybe the book sort of conjured up those sorts of interesting thing that I found out when I was kind of looking into stuff. The very first firefighter that was killed, or that they know of that was killed by a victim who jumped from the building, and he landed on top of the firefighter, and they think he was the first firefighter that was killed by a fallen victim.
Yeah.
I thought that was the guy, the firefighter's name was Daniel Suhr, Suhr. And apparently he was killed by a victim. So sad.
It is sad.
No matter how you died, it was sad.
Yes.
I want to go into a spoiler zone here in a little bit, but there's one more little piece of trivia that you might appreciate that I found out on the first plane. And I can't remember I can't remember the plane number, but it was the very first plane to hit the World Trade Center. There was a famous person on that plane. Famous-ish. Norman Mailer. No. What was the guy's name in Psycho that played Norman? What was that character? Norman
Bates?
Yes, Norman Bates. Thank you. Norman Mailer. Norman Bates.
Two very different people.
Yes. What's the actor's name that played Norman Bates?
Oh, Tony Perkins.
Yes, Anthony Perkins. Yeah, Tony Perkins. Yeah.
Yes.
His wife was on that plane.
Really?
Her name is Barry, Berry, Barry Berenson. And he was the widow, like he was a widower. Like they were married. She was on that plane. She wasn't like famous like he was, but she had been a model and she had been in, I think, 3 or 4 movies. So she was kind of a notable person that was in the first plane. Yeah. So
there was, I don't know which plane he was on, but I don't know if you ever watched Frasier or Cheers or.
I never watched it. Yeah.
David Angel was one of their producers, executive producers.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on one of the flights.
Oh, really? 11, I think 175.
I think he might have been on him and his wife.
Oh.
And they wound up, one of the characters had a baby, and they named the baby David. And it was in honor of David Angel.
Oh, that's
he was apparently a very successful television producer, but that was his biggest, I think that was his biggest one at the time. Frasier was huge.
Well, yeah, that was
Frasier
huge.
was a huge show.
Yeah.
Another one of my comfort shows, but I did know that they were on it.
I didn't realize that. I kind of, after I found out about Barry Berenson, I kind of did like a little Google search for like notable people that died like in the planes, and she was the only one I came up with. So that's interesting to know that they're not that it matters whether you're a common person or a famous person. It's still horrible, but yeah. Okay, so you want to go into the spoiler zone?
Spoilers.
What was the first spoiler that we were going to talk about? Do you remember?
Okay, well, I mean, the biggest one, of course, is that obviously Jake, in quotation marks, Jake, it's not Jake, it's Eric.
Yeah. And
they mentioned that when they meet. I didn't want to bring it up when I talked about when they met in the stair.
Yeah.
Well, they both stare at each other for a while because apparently they look just like each other.
Yeah.
They look just alike.
And what are the chances
of
running into your doppelganger?
Yeah. There are subtle differences, but they pretty much look alike. And
the fact that this guy who we thought was Jake was actually Eric, and the fact that Eric lived with Jamie for all those days, weeks, and she didn't know that it was not her husband.
And I mean, she had a few doubts.
She did.
But, and there were explanations for all of them.
Really.
There were.
It was very well thought out.
He'd been burned. He'd lost weight. He'd, all this stuff. And he'd forgotten her. So, of course, he maybe moves different, or his vocal cords had been damaged. So his voice was a little different. And, it was all very understandable. And the first hint that it might not be Jake did come earlier than I thought. The first hint to anyone else. I mean, I knew it wasn't Jake, but the first hint back to another character was when he was still in the hospital and Jamie looks at his chart and sees the blood type, and it's not his blood type.
Yeah. But they even had an explanation for that.
An explanation for that. It's like, oh, well, that means he can have this blood. Oh,
yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
But it takes other people to start questioning, well, are you sure?
Well, and didn't the daughter say right from the very beginning, that's not my dad?
No.
She didn't?
No.
I thought she did.
It was the dog.
Maybe that's what it was. I was like,
dog.
Okay, the dog did not like him.
The dog's name. It's not.
The
dog was okay once Jamie was like, it's okay. But the dog would bare its teeth
which was, would not have happened.
Which makes sense because even though he looks like Jake,
he was burned.
Like
yeah, he was burned. Yeah.
And that's what, I mean, dogs, gain sense of smell. Smells nothing like, you're not my master.
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
Yeah.
Get lost. Her best friend, the daughter's best friend, asked.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Asked.
Who is that?
Yeah, who is that? Asked her mom. Who was that with Jamie and Sierra?
Which again is an understandable question if he's been disfigured by.
Yes, but still, that's for her to pick up on.
It was almost kind of like a foreboding, shadow.
And then of
shadowing,
course they just
foreshadowing.
they go and do the blood test, and of course her first reaction is shock, and then it's my husband's dead.
My husband's dead, and I never knew it. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
which was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I have to give her. I was waiting for the backtracking on Faith, but it didn't happen.
No, it didn't.
It did not happen.
You almost
expect me. I expected
them to be so angry with God that this didn't. This is not my husband. My husband is dead. For all these weeks, I thought he was alive. Now he's dead. That's a perfect reason to step away from God and say, you know what? I want nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Because of what you put me through.
Yes. But that's not what happened.
No.
And to her credit. And again, this goes back to just the kind of person Jamie is. They've already said she's a good person. We've established that even before becoming a Christian. She's just a good person. And she agrees, well, we've got to find out who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So Eric stays on the condition that they don't tell Sierra, because he wants to have that conversation.
Right.
And stay there at the same time. It just confuse her more. She's 4, I think?
Yeah. Yeah. She's young.
So she's like, yeah, you can stay. We'll be friends. And again,
that would be hard.
It was a little awkward.
That would be hard.
They had crossed that line, and they came close to crossing that line.
They did.
Not super close, but close enough.
Yeah. Too close for comfort.
A little too close for comfort once the truth was known. And she's dedicated to helping him find out who he is. So there's all this research. And again, it's not super easy. These are still internet early days.
Mm-hmm.
Not super early days, but
it wasn't the Stone Ages, but yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Looking up, he had to have been an executive. If he was in the towers, he had to have worked there. But what they're doing is looking for someone who lives in New York.
Yeah.
And they don't even think about
because he doesn't realize that he lives literally on the other side of the country.
Because that's usually what you would do, is look for someone who lives in New York. You work in the towers. Well, no, he was there on a business trip.
So it was dead ends.
So it takes a while, but finally, and then that's when he remembers, my name's Eric, and wow, am I a horrible, horrible husband and father.
Yeah.
And it really humbles him.
Yes.
But he's got this backup. And again, that comes into play again, where it's actually a good thing that she gave him the journal, because he's got this Bible, but he's also got this journal from Jake, who, as we all know, is the best. And he has a way to apply it. Because like I told you earlier, it's easy to read the Bible and like, oh yeah. But sometimes it's so hard to apply it. But to have guidance from someone who did it on a daily basis.
Yeah. He lived it.
A really personal devotional.
Yeah. Yeah. Truly. Yeah. Well, and I think that was what was such a beautiful part of this story, in that, again, this could have turned out to be a very cringe story, because you as a wife, think about it. If you were in this situation and you had this man living with you for all these weeks, and you find out it's not your husband, like, would you, especially when you realize, okay, this is not my husband's dead. Oh, but yeah, you can stay for a few more days. Like, that would be hard. And that could have easily veered off into a cringe territory.
It could have, but it, again, handled very well.
Yes. And I think that was what was the beautiful part of the story, because in my mind, I don't know how it was for you, but in reading it, it almost turned into a God moment. Because if none of this tragedy had happened, and if this man hadn't showed up and, encouraged her to go to church and everything,
yes,
she would never have had her awakening, her, I don't know how you want to say it, but I mean, her salvation experience.
Yes.
So even, that's just a very poignant,
and
that beauty can come out of tragedy.
And he would never have found
the error of his ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Found who he used to be. Because again, what we find out is the reason Eric turned his back on God and was so angry at God is because Eric and Laura lost a baby girl before they had Josh.
Yeah.
And Josh is, 8?
Mm-hmm.
But apparently there was a baby girl and she was stillborn. The nurse apparently told them it would have been preventable with better care, which I think is... That's a horrible thing to say to anyone. Why would you tell someone that?
Yeah.
Especially someone as young as they were. I think they said she was 23.
Yeah.
And that's what drives him. That's the crux of when he starts, well, my wife is going to have the best care and we're going to have, the best house and this is never going to happen again. And that's when he gets driven. It's all work. It's all... Yeah. It comes from a good place. He wants to take care of everything, but he also turns his back on God at the same time. And then
he in the process, he estranged himself from his wife and his child.
Yes.
So again, it was an unhealthy balance.
Yes. So it's, and it works out, it works out, but meeting Jamie, being found and being mistaken for Jake. Jake has changed the lives of his wife and
the stranger
man from LA and this man's wife and son, presumably, because now he is new. Mm-hmm. He is made new.
Yeah.
And that is there's a little bit of discomfort over in the LA storyline because Laura sort of dated Eric's brother Clay before
they were married.
Eric. Mm-hmm. And there was a little bit of
and she even
maybe the possibility of a relationship with Clay is what they're working around to.
Yeah.
At the time, and then all of a sudden,
oops,
husband's alive.
Oops. Yeah.
Not that anything happened. Nothing really happened, but a little bit of awkwardness there.
Well, and she even had thoughts of he can be a replacement daddy for...
Yes. But it's not... I don't think she loves him. She loves him, but she's not... Not in the way that she loved Eric. She admits she's still as mad as she was at him, as sad as he made her. She still loved him.
She loved him.
She still loved him.
Yeah.
There was one more thing I wanted to... I can't think of it right now.
And the scene in the kind of one of the last scenes, because she chose not to meet.
I thought that was nice.
Yes.
I thought that was nice.
But it was so heartbreaking at the same time because she basically, this guy apparently had such an uncanny resemblance to her own husband. I can imagine how she would see her husband going away with this woman that's not her.
When they meet Laura at the airport and she hangs back because she doesn't want to, and what she sees is Eric embracing Laura, but he looks so much like her husband. It just that was rough.
Yeah, and again, she did a very good job. Carrie Kingsbury did a very good job with this because having two men totally unrelated to each other that look that much alike each other, that the wife, he's living with another woman and she still thinks that could come off as very unbelievable.
Very unbelievable.
In the hands of an incapable author. So again, that speaks to the writing skills of Carrie Kingsbury, that she was able to write that in a way that I don't think it came off as completely unbelievable.
I agree.
Yeah. So
I agree.
Well, is there anything else?
I can't.
That's the one thing I wanted to ask you before we kind of sign off. I know we've been going a little long, but since this is your first Karen Kingsbury, what did you think of it? Like,
I liked it. I liked it. Aside from the,
yeah.
I enjoyed it. That was just a reaction from me because Amnesia, not my favorite
trope.
Yeah, not my favorite trope, but she really did handle it very well.
So you enjoyed the book?
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
What? How would you rate it? Like 1 out of 5 stars?
Probably a 4.
A 4?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you read another? Like, Like, is it possible at some point you would probably maybe go on to the second book, or are you kind of done?
Probably.
Yeah. So I think I probably will too.
I think I know where the second book might be headed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah. It may be a little bit before, but I think at some point I do definitely want to read book 2. So, okay. And you would read Karen Kingsbury again at some point if you ever had the opportunity. Okay. Yeah. I think, for me, I think I'd give it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. So even though there were a few things about it I wasn't crazy about, I'm not one of those readers that like, I don't have to absolutely love a book to give it 5 stars. There are some people that if it's not the very top of my favorite books, then it doesn't get 5 stars. I enjoyed the book. I got a great deal of enjoyment out of it. So yeah, I think I would definitely give it 5 stars.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, you want to end it here?
Sure.
Okay. Since you're picking the next book,
yes,
and I don't even know at this point. You haven't even told me what book are we reading next. See, I was nice when I picked this Karen Kingsbury book. I told her beforehand. That way, and she
sort of told you beforehand. I just asked you about it.
Oh, okay. I guess I didn't catch on that you were.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the next one.
She's left me dangling all this time, wondering which book we're going to read.
Sorry, I thought. So, I've decided to punish Brett a little bit because this isn't the kind of thing he would normally read, but I've got some hectic stuff going on right now, and I need a little bit of a break. So we're going to do a book that I have read a bajillion times before, but he has never read it. He is a unicorn. He has not read this book. I say unicorn because most people who have read Christian fiction or who were raised in Christian households have read this book. We're going to do The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. He has also not seen the movie. I remember you mentioning
it. No, I haven't.
He has also not seen the movie. So if he had seen the movie, I was going to move on to something else. But I'm curious to see what he thinks of it. I'm not going to tell him anything about it other than it's set World War II.
World War II.
And it's not romance.
See, I'm not a big fan on classic books either. Yeah. So for the most part, I think we're going to do pretty recent books on the podcast. For
the most part.
But yeah.
I need a little help right now.
Yeah. So I'm good with checking it out and seeing how it goes. So
every once in a while, I'm going to throw him a curveball.
Yeah.
Because he needs culture.
But just know for every curveball you throw me, I'm going to throw one right back at some point.
He will. I know he will. That's okay. It's not a hard read. It is not a long read. So. And
you do know if there are 100 people listening to this, there's probably 100 people saying, "You've never read The Lion." What's it called?
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
The Lion. I've heard of it. I've just never. Yeah. So that's going to be our next read, and we'll have to figure out a date. But hopefully today, maybe we can do that about June 7th, somewhere in there. No, June 14th. Maybe around June 14th. We'll do the next episode. So, all right. I guess we are going to. Do you have anything else to say?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, I guess we are going to let you guys go, and we will see you in a couple of weeks with The Lion, the Chicken,
and the Wardrobe.
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Know what? If you're gonna mock,
you know me.
Yes, I know.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Bookish Introverts podcast, where together we explore the worlds within the pages. Until next time, stay bookish.